Then I got exposed to permaculture through podcasts. And one of the things that I struggled with was just it sounded so good and easy, and it shows how I extended my orchard, hand dug my swales, did them on contour with a A-frame.
Hello, and welcome to the Permaculture Vine podcast, where we talk about permaculture, education, careers, and business. I'm your host, Cormac Harkin, and today we welcome Scott from Thrive in the Future. And welcome, Scott.
Thanks for having me, Cormac.
Just want to give us a quick, short introduction there, please, Scott.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Scott Miller. I have 10 acres in northeast Kansas that we have everything from some permaculture gardens to chickens, horses, and donkeys. And one of the challenges we have here is I have real hard clay soil, and we don't get April showers bring May flowers. We get torrential May thunderstorms, a little bit in June, and then a whole bunch of drought in between. So it's a challenge not to kill more trees than I grow.
Well, you must be doing something right anyway. Uh, you're grow nut trees, but we'll get that in a minute.
Sure.
So this is about permaculture. So, do you want to just tell us your permaculture background? Like, when did you first come across it? Was it after you got your property, or before, or?
It was before. So I was introduced to prepping, and Jack Spirko's podcast, and my friend, one of my friends is a prepper. We were looking at property, and we ended up buying this 10-acre property. Shortly after that, then I got exposed to permaculture through podcasts. And one of the things that I struggled with was just it sounded so good and easy, and if you have this, you won't have any bugs, and if you have this, then you won't have to irrigate your trees. And I quickly found out that the stun method doesn't mean you should do that on on grafted apple trees. And I killed a bunch of apple trees for a couple of years. Eventually, I dug some hand dug swales and mounds, and then put the apple trees in those, and those seem to be doing pretty well, especially this time of year.
Great stuff. So self-taught then on your own property.
Yeah, pretty much. So I looked into going and taking some organized training, but especially in my area, they require a significant amount of like months working on Saturdays on people's farms around here. And I'm like, I've got other things to do on Saturday. I'm going to build my own farm. So I've made a bunch of type 1 errors. Yeah, killing trees, planting things that are too far away from water, and stuff like that. So it's been interesting.
Yeah. So 10 acres you've plenty to play with. What did you go for first?
So first there was a garden here. We started with the garden. It's very compacted clay soil, and they used a lot of chemicals on it. So it took a couple years to regenerate that. We brought in some compost. And one of the problems around here is a lot of the compost is municipal compost. So it has some residual herbicides in it, especially it seems like for Kansas City. If it came from Kansas City, they spray the lawns more over there. They spray the trees more over there, and I've had beans come up and then just die and stuff like that. So I have to be a little bit more careful. I use my horse's manure to make compost. One of the things you also have to watch out for is a lot of the hay. Most of the hay is sprayed, so that goes through and is residual in a lot of the compost if I buy it off of the internet locally or whatever. So folks are feeding their horses or cows hay that's been sprayed, and they either don't know it or it's not clear. So that's a constant challenge.
Yeah, I know it's been a challenge here as well with a horse manure,
Mm-hmm.
trying to source it correct, because people have had that, and you say the beans just die off.
Right.
And that's
And
it, you're
then the
stuck.
horses. So my horses, I use my own horse manure, but my horses, some of the weeds end up coming through the manure. We've got horse nettle, which is like a nightshade. and then some pokeweed. And for some reason, the horses either eat that or something happens, and that ends up in my garden. So that's my nemesis plants right now. I have to go through and and dig those up all the time.
Yeah, you haven't tried the hot composting? They burn them seeds off, or does it?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to get hot enough to do that. So it's I need to try that a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm in the
Horse.
city, so I get coffee grounds. Really heats it up.
Hmm. Yeah, the horse manure tends to stay more in balls for longer, so it's harder to break down. And by the time it breaks down, then some of the stuff, some of those weeds may be also growing in my manure pile, and they may not have come from the horses. They just might be there, and I end up digging them up with the manure.
Yeah. So then, so this is about uh business as well.
Hmm.
And how did you start the then? I know you have a few projects going on. What project came first to sort of try and supplement your income?
Sure. So I have a nut tree business. One of the challenges is growing anything in Kansas is tough, but growing chestnuts and hazelnuts is even tougher. If you get them, they usually come from the Northeast, the Northwest, whatever. And I ordered some from some farms there, and then they promptly died. My friend has some chestnut trees that he planted locally in a schoolyard, thinking that, oh, we're going to have chestnuts roasting by the open fire. We're going to demonstrate this for the kids. The principal said, no, we're not doing that. So the chestnuts they just drop tons of chestnuts and nobody does anything with them. So I went down there and collected buckets of chestnuts, ate some of them, put them in sand and sprouted them out, and then I planted them around my property. Some people were interested in it, so I started up a little side business with both online grownutTrees.com, and then I also sell locally. And one of the things that's been real popular this spring has been elderberry. So I've taken elderberry from cuttings. I've got elderberry all over the place here, and then also sprouts, and have been growing them out and then selling them locally.
Right. So just using free resource effectively to get you going, zero
Right.
cost.
Yeah, as
Uh,
much as possible.
yeah, it's going crazy now with the health and safety brigade. Like kids don't play conkers now.
Hmm.
That's what we called it. So we put the list through the chestnut, and uh, that's all banned. They don't play it. And if they do, they've got safety goggles on and
Oh
uh,
yeah,
all this kind of crack. And it was it's such a shame because we did it all the time when I was younger.
sure.
Yeah. So you grow them out. So you have the grow nut trees. And what else do you do on the property as well?
So we also I also grow some other plants, and and then one of the things that I've really focused on is if I'm creating new garden beds, then how to start those up, especially with clay soil. So what I do is I get a broad fork, I turn them over. I started planting a Milpa seed blend that's like 20 to 40 seeds. It's got corn, squash, and beans, and then it has other things mixed together. And depending on when you plant it, then it'll either be green dominant or it'll be squash dominant. And so I have, for example, I have a bed in my garden that just didn't do anything. I planted greens in there, it didn't work, and I think it's because it was raining too much or things this spring. So I took it and I just planted a bunch of milpa in there, and now it's mustard greens, buckwheat dominant right now. Some of the other ones that I planted, I have some beds along the driveway that I started new beds, and instead of putting cardboard down or anything like that, I turn the sod over with a broad fork, put a little compost down, put this seed blend there, and then a little bit of wood chips, and it's good for a year. It's just abundance, uh, and then it'll build soil. And then the next year I can come in and plant a little bit more into it. It'll be a little bit deeper and have more soil than just plain old clay.
Right. So you don't take a harvest from it, or do you take a harvest and use
Sure.
it to prepare
Hmm.
the bed? Right. So you take a harvest and it's preparing the bed. I think the roots go down in and loosen things up.
Right, and then it's very bean heavy, so then it all that all that adds some nitrogen, and then when it dies off in the fall, then it's got a lot of thatch, I can chop and drop it. It's automatically giving me some mulch to for over the wintertime.
Yeah, that's handy. I do a similar thing with potatoes and nasturtiums.
Hmm.
When the potatoes are finished, the nasturtiums come up, and then I just chop all them, and then throw some
Yeah,
beans in as well for it, and then chop them as well once they're. And then
yeah, I
that
love
just puts
nasturtiums.
that's yeah, one of my favorites. That puts it to bed then for the winter.
Hmm.
And even now I've stopped actually. I haven't done that bed this year. There's potatoes coming up through it. Uh, it's like mint and potatoes, hard to get rid of.
Yeah. So one of
Uh,
the things I've also been doing from a business standpoint is getting into evaluating people's land. And someone says, "Hey, can you come over here and walk my land?" So I'll go walk the land and give them some of my feedback. And then I ended up selling them some trees and planting some trees there.
yeah. So how did you get into that? Was that just from your own experience? Somebody ask you, or did you actively go out and start advertising?
I haven't started advertising, so it's mainly been word of mouth. It's mainly been friends and contacts, and that's one of the challenges is friends and contacts. Then all of a sudden, if you go into business mode, it's like, hey, wait a minute, I thought we were friends, right? So it's that's always a challenge, and we've been talking a little bit about that in our the permaculture business design course that you and I have been in. So it's like, how do you segment that out so that and you have the boundaries? I like how you're doing it, where you have your consult and then you have a break and you say, okay, this is what I can do. I always my challenge is I want to jump right into the solution, right? And I have to learn to listen a little bit more, ask some more questions, and then have that break and think about it. And I did that with this last project, and that seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah, it's definitely good having that break or just identifying what the client needs.
Hmm.
And they mightn't even need your services. They might need might need somebody else's or
Right.
and then as well, do they need a design? Do they need a couple of consults?
Sure.
And then just presenting that to them, saying this is what you need for your property. If you need help with any of that, I can. These are the services I provide. But as you say, it's hard to not go into solution mode, especially with
Right.
friends.
Yeah, and I planted
Uh,
some. So I did that in the early spring. I planted some chestnuts, and we had a weird winter, so the chestnuts didn't come out of dormancy. So I went over to replace them, and they were more excited about having mulberries added. So I was like, okay. So we replaced the core trees in the guild with mulberries, and they seemed pretty happy about that.
yeah. You're not worried about juggling tolerance or anything like that. Is that?
As long as we don't have walnuts involved, right? So
Walnuts.
they have some black walnut, and you have to stay
Uh,
away from those.
that's what I was getting the two mixed up there.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, you mentioned the permaculture design course. How are you finding that?
Yeah, I like it.
The
So we're taking the permaculture business design course through Regeneration Nation CR. And one of the things I like about it is to step back and say, who are you serving? I've usually modeled my business after myself, right? One of the things that some of the online, gurus say is, speak to yourself where you were 1 or 2 years ago. And so that's what I've modeled most of my business after. And in some cases, I have to stop and say, okay, what do you like to eat? Because people don't necessarily want to eat chestnuts or, if they don't eat a lot of nuts or anything. And there's a lot of folks that don't eat a lot of vegetables. So it's like, um, I don't want to plant a bunch of, say Milpa, and then it has a lot of mustard greens, and they don't like mustard greens or something like that, right? And so that's one of my challenges is being able to have that space so that they can talk and I can take notes, and then not make it so modeled after myself, right? And that's good. I really like the exercises we've been doing there. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been enjoying it. It's very easy to sort of cheat yourself
Hmm.
and get stuck into the doing part and building a website and creating all this material and market material without actually sitting down and doing the hard graft.
Right.
I like the way he's laid out the hard graft for us and saying, right, you have to contact all these people, you have to write these lists, you have to write the scripts, you just have to. I really, really like the way it's all laid out and you just follow it.
Yeah.
So I've started a new project now with a couple of guys in Europe, and what we're doing is we're going through this process now of like who is our customer,
Yeah.
who do we want to talk to, and I think the
Hmm.
course is very, very good at figuring that out and just sitting yourself down and saying, right, go talk to people, pick up the phone, ask them what the problems actually are, and I think Jason himself, he ended up his business was it water catchment
Sure.
systems for where he is in Costa Rica. So going through that process to end up at that final destination, I really like that. But and then as well, just it's I always like the class as well. I like just meeting other people as well, and that student participation part of it.
Yeah, and I really like Jason's enthusiasm as well. So that's really been good.
Yeah, he's been on that. He's been on here as well before.
Hmm.
So I'll leave the link down below for that course. I think you can still sign up for it.
Great.
Uh, yeah. So you have the Thrive in the Future podcast as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about
So
that?
sure, and that's over 2 years old now. So what happened was my friend and I were going to workshops and things like that back during COVID, and we were having conversations about how to build community, how to thrive instead of being dominated by fear and everything else, and as well as permaculture, as well as gardening and things like that. So we started a podcast where we were just having conversations about that. And for the first year, it was just he and myself, and then he decided he wanted to go and become an Orthodox monk. So he's been on that monastic path. So I rebooted it, and I bring folks like you on, and then we have conversations along that line. And
Yeah.
it's really focusing on positive solutions. Everybody, especially right now, because most of the podcasts in the homesteading space have a certain amount of prepping and there's a lot of anxiety and stuff, and I like to try and focus. I have enough anxiety as it is, right? I try and focus on what kind of positive solutions are we doing, and then what have we done, what's the pluses, what's the wins, and what's the losses, right? And that's what we focus on.
Yeah, definitely like the positive aspect. There's a few YouTube channels have gone full panic mode. Uh,
Hmm.
this is going to happen if you don't do this.
Right, right.
But then their viewership went way up. No, they're in the millions. And it's like that fear sells.
Sure. Yeah,
You know?
exactly. It's hard to have a positive podcast because people want to hear, unfortunately, that kind of stuff. So the numbers go up and the numbers go down, whatever. And so then that's been pretty successful. I'm on episode 135, something like that, and I've only missed 1 or 2 weeks in 2 years, so that's pretty good. 2.5 years now.
Yeah, that's really good. I've missed a few weeks already this year, but I don't let it bother me. It's a,
Uh
I
huh.
miss it. I miss it. It's I sort of listen to the life cycles. It's just if don't get it done, don't get it done. That's
Right.
one of the best things
Exactly.
of doing it for yourself.
Yeah, and I think one of the keys there is, if you're a content creator, is like I said, speak to where you were at 2 years ago, 1 year ago, whatever, and what problems did you see, and speak to those. That seems to work, and because
Yeah,
folks are
that's
somewhat behind
that's
on that.
yeah. So that's where our course, the PDCD Pro, is. It's basically teaching people digital design. So how do you get started, and
Hmm.
then how do you go through that initial consultation process as well. So you come out with PDC, and you're like, well, what do I do? So we teach people sort of that client communication piece, how to extract information, how to put
Right.
that information digitally on Affinity Designer, and then how do you display that information on a web page. So basic web design, basic course. So that's where I was 2 years ago. I had to learn that myself. So that's, but
Right.
this podcast is For us, it's learning. So I'm going through a learning phase at the start of my career. Right? How do I? Yes, I'm doing some design work, but that's freelance. So the sort of point of the podcast was right. Well, I want a permaculture business. How do I go about that? And then I've talked to people about and figure out what they're doing, and then share it with an audience. So it's that
Sure.
education, bring people along. Uh,
Hmm.
so I'm going to be now implementing some of them things as well. So it'll be interesting to see, trying to still figure out how I'm going to document that without spent taking up too much time. Because the podcast is, I have it down to a couple of hours now, where you talk for an hour and then you edit and publish.
Right.
It's 4 hours max, so it's
Hmm.
manageable. Do you really want to be spending 7 8 hours editing a YouTube video on a Sunday? And it's like no.
Yeah.
uh, so it's how to do that. How do you take advance it without killing myself? Because then if things get too much for me, then I stop enjoying them, and then what's the point?
Yeah, I edit the audio, but I don't edit the video very much. It that makes it too choppy. But I edit the audio because I have too many uhs and it's more noticeable to me and things. So I usually edit the audio a little bit more aggressively. I like what you're doing with both your podcast and especially on your website where you're talking to some of the newbie people. I think a lot of the times in permaculture we get past that and then we're like talking the permaculture talk and you're also starting with, hey, you're starting gardening. This is what are you going to do about water catchment? What are you going to do about square foot gardening and things like that? That's something that I've had a challenge with is oh yeah, okay, I forget I need to talk to the newbies as well, right? So yeah, that's I like how you're doing that.
That is very intentional.
Mhm.
Because we did notice that it was, as you say, the permaculture content. People want to show how much, not to show how much, they want to show what they know.
Right.
So they go to like 10 out of 10. Look at this magical thing I'm doing, and you look at it and you. Ugh. But it's like they even tell someone they need to catch rainwater, the benefits of rainwater, then what to do with that rainwater. It's very intentional. That's where we're going to stay. We're just going to we have some more articles to write, and then we're going to get trying to get back on that now this winter and finish it off. I had a
Hmm.
series planned, 40 weeks with 3 articles a week.
Wow.
So I thought I would do it in one year. So it basically takes you through the gardening year.
Hmm.
So you start as a beginning gardener, and then takes you right up the sort of what do you do all this harvest at the end of it, and collecting
Right.
seeds at the end of the year, so that you really could sit down. And then that's our content going forward. As you sit down at the start, and that's how you learn beginner in gardening, and then you go off somewhere else and learn all the complicated stuff once you get into it.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it
around
might.
here, in addition to that, like right now, we're starting to see the seeds are no longer in the store. The plants are no longer in the store, right? Because we're getting into summer. The initial growing season in May and early June is over, but there's a whole nother season here. If you plant it in March, and our last frost date here is the middle of April, but I can plant some potatoes in March. They're just about ready to harvest, and then I can get another season out of it before I get my last frost date in October. And a lot of people forget that, but one of the guys I have on my show quite a bit is Grant Payne. He'll go down and buy everything on clearance down at the store, and then end up turning it around and nurse those plants back to health and end up selling them in the fall or something. So it's sometimes we forget that fall garden time, right?
Yeah, and I seen as well. What do you call the guy from Michigan owns the seed company? He was planting
Mm-hmm.
tomatoes in Michigan in like July, August,
Yeah,
and getting a harvest before that. No, before that it got really cold, and then I think two potatoes is another one. You can plant potatoes now and get them later.
sure.
Whereas people just tend to plant potatoes at the start and forget about it. But you can actually plant potatoes now and have them. I can leave my potatoes in the ground here because we don't get a hard frost. So you can
Mm-hmm.
get potatoes at Christmas Day.
Oh wow, yeah, that's great.
And that's just taking them out of the potatoes I bought in the store. When they start to sprout, I just throw them in the garden somewhere.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
it's not
even
really.
even the organic ones around here, they spray it with something so they won't sprout usually. So, I usually have to get seed potatoes or keep my potatoes. And if I don't do a fall crop, then I won't have seed potatoes for the spring. And sometimes they sprout out too much anyway, but so those are some of the challenges.
Yeah, I actually got potato seeds last year.
Really?
Yeah, it was somebody I didn't realize you could do that, but you can get the it's like a wee it looks like a tomato, it's like a wee green thing,
Hmm.
but that's actually you can I cut that out and there's wee seeds inside and that's you can grow seed potatoes from them. I didn't know that till
Right.
recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can land race your potatoes. Like Mike Jones was telling me all about this. That's what he's going to do. He's going to land race his own. He's trying to land race a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I think land racing is really great just because um, seeds have a memory. If I'm buying them from somewhere else, even if they're one state over, they don't seem to do as well. And then a lot of the tomatoes sometimes they'll develop blight. And if I can rotate them around or then have some sort of land race where I'm saving the seeds, then I should be able to get them a little bit better.
Yeah, which is what you're doing with the trees, right? With
Hmm.
local chestnuts.
Right.
And you have a blog yourself as well.
Yes. Hmm.
And what's
Yeah.
that?
So Thrive in the Future also it has blog posts on it. Um, Shows how I extended my orchard, hand dug my swales, did them on contour with a A-frame and plumb bob and all that, and then what it looks like in year one, what it looks like in year two, and what's really important from a podcast standpoint was a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, whatever, I moved my blog articles over to a different site, and that really hurt my organic SEO. My most visited article or anything, episode, anything on Thrive in the Future is how to sex chickens based on their feathers. It's something I wrote back in 2022, and it's my number. I mean, I get 20 hits a day on that, just that article, especially right now because everybody is, they have chicks. They're trying to figure out. They got a straight run of chicks, and they're trying to figure out if they're male or female. So, and that works. You can check them by the feathers, the shape and things until the second or third generation. So, yeah, you got to have enough blog articles on your podcast site so that you're still getting Google and search engine traffic.
Yeah, I separated mines out as well. I took the podcast to another site.
Hmm.
So I had Vine Permaculture and then I had the Permaculture Vine.
Right.
Uh, and I took them back onto one. I don't know if that was sensible or not, but it was just too much to manage. Then it was like, right, two websites, two checks, two updates.
Right.
So
And I wasn't.
uh,
I haven't been getting all that much traffic to the blog site, so I'm moving them back onto Thrive in the Future, and then I've got one brand. I've got hopefully it'll drive. For some reason, it drives more to the blog articles than it does to individual episodes, even with big name people, and stuff. So yeah, and we'll see if that improves traffic.
yeah, I find the smaller people's audience, the more they share it.
Hmm.
Uh, so, and like I've had a few, as you say, big names. So, but you don't see a massive peak or anything. It's just still trundles along.
Right. Well, and I
Uh,
think we're also getting to the point where people are saturated with podcasts. I had a as part of feedback from Jason's course is I had a community call with some of the folks that are the main guests and listeners on my podcast, and I said, okay, so what do you think I could do better? What kind of topics do you want to hear? And one of the things they said that was really surprising was a lot of people aren't listening all the way through podcasts. They're not listening week to week. A lot of people just jump on a podcast because, hey, my favorite guy's on here this week. And then you're not getting a sticky audience week to week. So it's, I think everybody's kind of getting um, just saturated with podcasts. They said they've kind of got podcast fatigue, we're starting to see more of the short videos and the short episodes and little clips and things taking off more so than the longer format. So we'll have to see how that works. So going forward in the next year.
So that's interesting to know. For me, and my own personal listening habits, I listen to uh, say like yourselves, your podcast or Jack Spirito's if I'm doing housework,
Mm-hmm.
folding the clothes or put them away. But if I'm out in the garden, I don't like to have headphones on.
Right.
I like to be in the garden,
Yeah.
or I'll listen to it in the car on the way to and from work.
Yeah.
But I know some people have said they listen to podcasts in the garden, but I don't like that at all.
Yeah. I can't do that. So I mostly listen to podcasts when I'm driving to town. And so I'm going to listen to the first 20 minutes and then I may forget to turn it back on or I'm in a different mindset or whatever else
Yeah.
afterwards. So I think most people, if we actually tracked it, are probably listening to the first 15 or 20 minutes and that's pretty much it.
So that's probably why then you need another reason for doing your podcast. It's not just to get listeners. It's you're either learning yourself or
Exactly.
making contacts, or it's driving traffic to your website.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, aye.
And
So
that's
you
one of
you've
the things. That's one of the things is people aren't treating those things as businesses, right? And your hosting goes up the first year because they gave you a break when you started out. Goes up after for 1 year, and then goes up after 2 years, and you're going, wait a minute here, is this still cost effective and worth my time to do, right? So
yeah, because like, for here they give you the first year's your domain for £1.
right.
The next year it's up to 20.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
then
it
if
adds
you have
up pretty
three,
fast.
if you're anything like me, you'll have 7 or 8 domains that are sitting there doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That one
What's
day is
this?
gonna, one
Yeah.
day is going to make me rich.
Yeah, what's the saying that you're not really an entrepreneur unless you have 20 domain names that you
So,
bought that are in waiting? So
and you have a garden blog as well, don't you?
yeah, I started up
All garden.
a garden blog not too long ago called allgardenadvice.com. And so it has, and basically what happened was I got into Flippa, which is the website flipping um, website, and I started looking at that as a side hustle. One of the things on there was a starter website. There was a garden website. I took it. I like the template. It's in WordPress, and then I added my own content. It just gives another avenue to make some side money and also drive some traffic into the other things. So the podcast is mostly a lead magnet. Everything else drives into whatever affiliate sales or training or now moved more into consults.
Yeah. So so you have multiple streams of driving traffic in. So it's not just
Right.
the one thing, which is
Hmm.
the diversity permaculture
Absolutely.
principle. Yeah. You mentioned affiliates here. I haven't started putting affiliates on the site yet. I signed up for permis.com. I think there's a few others about.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. I like Permies because they have a higher percentage affiliate payout. So, I mean, Amazon has maybe 3% on some things. Sometimes it's up to 5%. But if you put a book on there, most people are going to buy the Kindle version. And I've never seen a Kindle sale. So I think most people just get on there and then they buy Kindle. Amazon's wanting to move towards a subscription model for Kindle. So I don't know what's going on with that, but I never see any book sales. And everything else, I had a whole lot of Amazon sales in the last month, but it was only 3%. So whereas Permies or one of the, I mean, like your affiliate or whatever has 20, 25, sometimes 50%. The key is, are you speaking to the same audience as everybody else, and are they interested in it, right? Um, Permies comes out every year with a homestead ebook collection that's like $30 or $40 or whatever, and it has like 50 ebooks, videos, and training and everything else in there. So that's usually a good buy. That's been a pretty good turnaround, and because people see the value in that. So I I've had a lot of success with that this year.
So have we missed anything now? We have the Thrive in the Future, the podcast, the website, all garden maintenance advice, grownuptrees.com.
I'm a Renaissance man, I guess. I don't know.
uh, uh,
So
yes, good to see the different revenue streams. Now, your your day job's in IT.
yeah, I'm a project manager in the insurance industry.
So, what do you think of the AI and how that'll have an effect on permaculture design?
Well, I think one of the challenges we have, like for project management, they say, okay, well, there's been some really good things about AI. Most of the big corporations lock down, so you can't use AI because it's a security risk. And and I've used AI for writing, but it writes flowery, weird stuff that doesn't sound like me. And the things that separate you from AI from a writing standpoint for like blog is your personal view on things, and that's just not in AI. They use big words and it's all flowery and stuff. So I don't I don't use AI except maybe to get some ideas. But yeah, we're starting to see from an industry standpoint in IT, if somebody says AI, they'll get an RFP. They'll win a contract, right? And oh, we've added AI, to our customer service. We've added AI to our whatever, our call center or something like that. They don't actually say what they're doing with AI, but that sounds magical. So then they end up winning the contract. So
Right.
we're seeing a lot of that. I haven't
So it's
really
like
seen any
big
impact
data
yet on
10 years ago.
development.
Sorry.
Yeah, I haven't seen any impact on
Uh,
development yet, but I've heard a lot of developers say that they're starting to see some AI, and I'm starting to see a lot of AI come up in LinkedIn and in interview questions and things like that. So it's a good thing to get used to. What I really find interesting, I saw a tweet last week that said, what I want is I want AI to do the stuff that I don't want to do, like laundry and everything else, so I can do the fun stuff like writing and art.
yeah.
And instead, AI is doing writing and art, and I get stuck doing the laundry.
I seen
You
that
know,
post myself. Uh,
yeah, and that's there's something wrong with that. So it's but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. There's a tough job market right now, especially in the U.S. So we'll see how that works out going forward.
yeah, I think it's going to just go the way like yourself. You work and then you have the side hustles.
Hmm.
For me, that's what I'm aiming for. A nice the day job, and then plus all the permaculture related stuff. And then with the AI, we use it for we'll start with a blog article, and then I use a thing called Market Muse. It tells me what a type on a topic, and it gives you a list of keywords and stuff.
Sure. Hmm.
Starts I start there, and then you write the article. But then, as you say, you have to put your own experience on AI. You can't say I was out digging the garden the other day.
Right. Right.
And then what
Yeah,
we
because
try to
it'll
do,
it'll talk third person and and stuff, and one of the things that sets us apart is this is what I think and this is what my experience is, and that seems to separate us, that content at this point from AI. Now you can, if you're a prompt wizard, say write in the style of you know Cormac or whatever, and then it's going to go and it's going to look at everything you've written at your blog, and then it's going to write in your style. But most people don't do that, so it's at this point we're okay. People aren't
yeah.
saying write in Scott's style, right? You know.
And then as well for the blog, what we try to do is link it to a YouTube video that we've done ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of here's me talking about composting in our video from my composting article. They just give Google that's it's genuine. But I follow a few like blogging channels on YouTube, and they're saying it's the blog market's struggling at the minute
Right.
with that traffic, and I see Google's sending a lot of stuff to Reddit, which is have you noticed that?
Mm-hmm.
So if you type on the Google now, it'll go to a Reddit thread. So you could spend your time writing a blog detailing how to compost, and some guy goes on Reddit and posts, and it's Google sending to them. Which I think he said the reason for that was something to do with clicks. So before
Yeah.
they Google separated the marketing team from the engineers, so that the
Mm-hmm.
engineers would build the best product to get you the right thing. But then the sales and marketing people says no, they've mixed that. We want more clicks for revenue,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interfering with the
Absolutely.
search results.
Yeah, and supposedly Google will favor human written things over AI, which is funny because everybody's pushing towards AI, and yet they're making some determinations in there. I don't know, but as far as I know, all I know is most of my traffic for my site's coming on that chicken article. So
Yeah, and for me, in terms of permaculture and AI, I'm not really worried. Like, yes, you'll be able to get a lot of plants or whatever, but it's that personal touch that people want. People don't want an AI design in their garden or giving
sure.
them advance. They want a human being. They want a face. And they want someone, if you can, in person,
Mm-hmm.
and provide that long term support. So
Right.
I'm not worried about it.
So you're doing the initial consult, and how do you how do you do that, and then work that in and make that transition? I've seen you talk about it a little bit. Can you explain it a little bit more?
So the initial consult is for food forest abundance, called a strategy session.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 30-minute free call. It normally lasts longer than the 30 minutes. So you're just finding out the person, where are they at, what they need. Do they even need a food forest design? Do they need a consultation? Do they need just pointed in the right direction? So quite often they don't even know what an annual is or a perennial.
Mm-hmm.
And then I often start with that question: what do you eat? As you said, it's like, what do you eat? What do you want to grow? Grow what do you want to eat, and then explain things, the basics, like nuts. You'll not get a harvest for 8 years, but high protein, high fat, great survival crop. It's just there. Then fruit trees take a certain time, but your berry bushes, get them on. That's a quick one.
Right.
And then things like that. Just the basics. Find out what they need, and then see what their next step is. Just give them a bit of advice, saying, right, uh, I would advise you now to go and look at even foraging. Like, some people have 10 acres,
Mm-hmm.
and the first thing I say is go hire a foraging expert to come on your property and write everything down that you can eat. Because you might have to grow a food forest. You might have enough there that you can forage. You might have
That's
nuts.
awesome.
And then just tell them to go into that first. And then from that point, see if they need what they need to grow. And as you said, I think you mentioned earlier, then what if they're paleo diet? What if they just eat meat? And if they're concerned about survival, it's like, right, get rabbits, two
Mm-hmm.
ducks, or two, what is it, one buck, two does. So get you so much protein every month. So it's just what they need. So you're not necessarily, it's not a hard sell, as in, right, I have to get this person on a design sale. It's just seeing what they need just to get them started. So there's a bit of, and then it's like 1 in 10 calls, and you might get a sale.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll find that person that actually needs a design, or do they need a tailored consult package? Like, do they just need 5 or 6 consults over the course of a year whilst they're putting on their garden? Um, so that's basically the the short and the long of it, really.
Yeah, I really
uh,
like what you said there about the foraging expert. Um, there's a guy I know, Kerry from Strong Roots Resources. He does that in addition to his permaculture things, and I think that's a good sidebar right there. What you were talking about is first hire a foraging expert to come out and look at your land, and you may have a significant amount of food that's already growing there. I've got plantain all everywhere, growing up and down my paths. I take some of that, I throw it in a smoothie. um, and we've got henbit, we've got lots of other things around here that we can pick and at least add to your salads. And I've really focused a lot in the last couple of years on turning more of my gardens into perennial greens, like sorrel and things that taste good added to a salad. They last longer. They won't burn up like regular greens do in the spring. I have a very limited window where the greens are going to bolt. Um, and all most of my annuals failed this early spring, but the perennials came back up. The plantain, the horseradish, the other things, and I was able to take some of those, mix them into smoothies, and have a pretty good green source, or at least cut them and give them to the chickens to augment their diet as well.
Yeah, I think that's as well. It's very easy just to tell people, "Oh, you need all this big annual garden,"
Mm-hmm.
but then are they actually going to go out and tend to that garden and weed it and do all the work required? And like somebody come on and say, "Oh, I want a market garden." It's like, well, have you got 15, 20 hours a week to
Right.
manage that? And then it's like I'm going to sell. I want to sell the stuff to the community. And it's like, well, that's a lot of work. You're turning
Mm-hmm.
over a lot of annuals there. Is that what you really want? And start explaining to them, giving them a
Sure.
different perspective.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely. Yeah.
I certainly do not want to run a market garden. I like the perennial systems where you go out like strawberries, they just come back. Wee bit of
Mm-hmm.
work dividing them or spacing them out again, but it's not too intensive. Potatoes, you throw them in, and a couple months later you've got spuds.
Right.
Not really that complicated. But for me, it's about getting them systems in place that make food growing easy. So I'm not out in the garden all the time growing food or having to
Absolutely.
spend an hour, 2 hours out there every day. As you say, it's easy just to go out and harvest the stuff that comes back all the time.
Yeah, I have to harvest or forage some comfrey and make some comfrey salve for my wife this weekend. So she ran out of comfrey salve, so she wants some more.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm going to do is Brian Alexovich on. He does the comfrey business.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try
Really?
and get some. Yeah, he does like he yeah, he takes comfrey. He has it in different places.
Hmm.
And he teaches you how to do the business, the comfrey business. So he does a
Wow.
consult with you,
Yeah,
and
send
as
me a
well
link to
as
that. I'd like to hear some more about that.
yeah,
I've had some good luck with selling the comfrey crowns and comfrey cuttings, and added those to grow nut trees. But I haven't. I know some people make salves and things, but they're only somewhat popular at the. People just don't know what they are, and they're only somewhat popular at the farmers market. So I'd be interested to hear some more about that.
yeah. So I think what he does is he sends you the roots, the bare roots, and then you plant
Mm-hmm.
them, and then as they grow, it's like a business in a box type thing.
Really? Wow. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I dug up a whole bunch of comfrey, and even though I had a comfrey crown that was like this big, there was still enough left in the ground where it came back with no problem. So, you're never
yeah.
gonna. I warn people, plant this where you want it because you're never going to get rid of it. So,
Well, believe it or not, I've actually had two attempts at growing comfrey and I killed it twice.
really,
Wherever I planted it at the top of the garden, just it just died and just never came back.
hmm,
And
wow,
then I got another cutting off somebody else. Now it was my own fault to put it in a pot, and it never came back either. And I think I'm the
hmm,
only person in the world who's killed comfrey twice.
gosh,
It's
that's
quite an
funny.
achievement. I don't know how I did it, but apparently it's very hardy.
hmm.
Uh, Scott, any final thoughts now before we wrap us up?
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty tough year. It's a tough job market. Everything else, figure out how you can grow your own food. It'll help you feel a little bit more confident, and keep positive. When times are tough.
Yeah, great stuff. And I definitely recommend Scott's podcast, folks. It's I listen to it every week.
No, thank you.
Uh,
Yeah,
Great
that's at
stuff.
thrivingthefuture.com. It's also on all your favorite podcast apps. And then if it's a good video, I put it out on YouTube. I'm spending more time making little shorts because those seem to get a lot more attention on Instagram and things now too.
I was doing the Opus shorts,
Hmm.
Opus.pro.
Right.
It hit and miss. If I put them through like Buffer, uh, which is a sort of content, what do you call it, distribution platform,
Sure.
They would get 0 views, but if I put them straight on the TikTok myself, they were getting like 700, 800 views.
Hmm.
And then if he didn't get that 700, 800 views straight away, they would sit and they would get like 10, and
Right.
they would just stay at 10. I never actually figured it out, and then I was just put myself under too much pressure
Yeah, and
to
it's
get them
not
out
really
every day.
views. It just means that it came up when somebody was scrolling. It doesn't mean they
Uh,
stopped. It doesn't mean they watched it. And yeah, that's some of that is hokey, but
uh, and you reckon Instagram's the one to go on?
I've been using Instagram to try and expand some of it. One of the problems with Instagram is it doesn't have a. It's not like Twitter where you can embed a URL and somebody can't click through. Instagram and Facebook don't want you leaving their platform, so you can put a URL in the text and it won't go there. You have to copy and paste, and most people won't do that. So that's one of the drags. I prefer Twitter, even though it's a garbage fire sometimes. So
Yeah, I think Twitter's just what you make of it. I don't really
exactly
communicate that much on Twitter, but it's if you just curate your feed, do what you want to see, you can drown out a lot of that noise.
right. Yeah,
And
I
then,
I always check myself. I'll start responding to something and then I'll say, yeah, this isn't positive. This isn't aligned with my brand, and then I won't hit send. you know, that's the best way to go.
and that's something I avoid because I made the mistake last week. I did it. Somebody posted about permaculture courses should be free,
Mm,
and then I typed something, uh, and then it was just more people in, and it's just no, I just like these response and checked out. I was like, I'm not going there because it's just you can waste so much energy.
right.
Uh, move on to something more positive. Watching somebody else garden.
Exactly. Yeah. There, if you
uh,
if you curate your stuff, and then you can stay positive with it.
have you tried the spaces at all?
No, I haven't tried that.
Yeah, there's a few people, permaculture people in there doing spaces. I haven't been on there yet,
Hmm.
so I haven't tried it. Might be worth trying some night.
That
Maybe
sounds
we could
good.
host a joint space on permaculture uh,
Oh, you mean Spaces on Twitter? Yeah,
on
I
Twitter.
haven't I haven't tried the live stuff yet,
Uh,
so that's one thing I need to try.
uh, Great stuff, Scott. Thank you very much for your time. And
You
guys, that
bet.
was Scott from Thriving the Future podcast. See you all next week. Cheers.